welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a book versus TV show for Season 2 of Interview with the Vampire. Now last year I did a two-part series for Season 1 talking about the differences of characters, plot points, you name it. Now I did a two-part series because I did one part halfway through the show and then I did another part when the show was done. This time around I decided to watch the entirety of Season 2 and then make a video. I might not get every single plot point that has changed between the book and the show, but I'm going to be focusing on the major differences and some of the characters that look just a tad different. So, let's get into it. As I start every one of these, it's time for character differences. In the first part of this series, I talk about the main characters, Louis, Lestat, Claudia. But in this one, I'm going to be talking about some of the characters that get more of a role in Season 2 or weren't in Season 1. Starting off with Madeline. Now, Madeline does not have a big part in the book, nor does she in the movie. The show, she probably has the biggest role she has ever had. They actually go into her backstory and bring her to life rather than her just being there. In the book, Madeline is a doll maker, specifically baby dolls. She lost her child. I'm not sure how, but she lost her kid and makes dolls, and Claudia just latches on and goes, "Ooh, I like her." In the book, Louis describes Madeline. Her dark red hair was parted in the middle and drawn back to her ears, though a dozen little ringlets escaped to make a frame for her pale face, and she was looking at me with two calm violet eyes and a child's mouth that seemed almost adorably soft, adorably the Cupid's bow unsullied by paint or personality. Claudia resembled one of these baby dolls that Madeline made, and Claudia wanted Madeline as a companion, and Madeline, knowing that Claudia was stuck as a child and she had lost her own child, realized that if she became the vampire mother to Claudia, she would never lose her child again. So this kind of rang with Madeline. In the show, Madeline is a seamstress and a dress shop owner. Claudia does find an attraction to Madeline, just like enthralled by her and her awesomeness. Madeline does have red hair, and but she's not a mother. She was not a mom that lost her child. She doesn't make dolls. She makes clothes. And they meet because Claudia sees a dress in the window and wants the dress for herself. But obviously it's made for a adult woman. So she wants it fixed so it'll fit her. Madeline doesn't really want to at first, but eventually, after being paid in crumpled bills and bloody earrings, adjusts the dress for Claudia. Now, Nicholas, nicknamed Nicky by Lestat, was described as being tall with dark brown hair and dark eyes. Nicholas is a pessimist by nature and has an issue with depression. He's cynical. He doesn't see like the beauty in the world. He is quite talented with the violin, and he does, find like a closeness with Lestat, but he has always dealt with this darkness that just like swallows him up. And he doesn't see the world in good and bad. It's more of like good and bad art. Nicholas is only in one episode for like 10 minutes. He gets a very small part. They don't really go into his backstory or his personality much at all. But this is coming from Louis and Armand's point of view, not Lestat's point of view. So you're not going to get as much Nicholas because, well, Armand wasn't around Nicholas that much. I don't know if he's considered tall. Sam Reed, I tried to find his height. It ranged from like 5'10" to 6'1"-ish. And from what it looked like, the actor who played Nicholas was around the same height as Sam, so not short. He did have brown hair and brown eyes. You didn't get to see if he was more pessimistic about the world. You didn't really get to see much of that. And it is not known if Lestat and Nicholas were lovers at the beginning. In the Tale of the Body Thief, Lestat mentions that Nicholas was his former lover, which they don't bring up. I don't believe they mentioned before then. It's kind of implied, but it's not like a, yeah. In the show, they don't really hide it at all. They were just lovers from the get-go, which, you know, nice change of pace. You know, you're just like, all right, yep. But we don't get a lot of Nicholas to really get to know him. Then there's Santiago. Now, Santiago does, well, he has a big part to play in the book, but he's not, like a described character. Santiago is the first vampire that Louis comes across in Paris, and he describes Santiago. He was enormous in height, though gaunt as myself, his long white face very clear under the lamp, his large black eyes staring at me in what seemed undisguised wonder. In the show, Santiago has like bleach blonde hair, probably not natural. He is very pale, quite tall, I would say, and his eyes are like this greenish yellow color. Armand is probably the most drastic change. I have talked about the Armand change in the Queen of the Damned video that I made, but I'll say it again. In the book, Armand is described by Marius, the man who made him, as, "This was a boy, as I had said, and he had a head of long curly hair, but his face was shining white and perfect, the countenance of a god, it seemed, a Cupid out of Caravaggio, seductive yet ethereal, with auburn hair and dark brown eyes." Not once has he ever been actually shown as his book counterpart. They always change how he looks. He's never once been remotely even close to a ginger, which is fine. And of course he was stuck at 17, which is fine, but you know, depending on how these characters interact with one another, sometimes it's just a good idea to age characters up. In the show, Armand is from India. He has shoulder-length, curly black hair, and originally had dark eyes. Now his eyes are like a reddish-brown color, and he was turned at the age of 27. I don't care if a character doesn't look like, it doesn't have to be an exact copy of the book. Sometimes, depending on, you know, if you watch the show and then read the book, you're going to imagine those characters in the book, and, you know, vice versa. I don't care if the character looks different. You know, the Armand thing, it's fine. I don't care that they haven't made him a 17-year-old curly-haired ginger, but I just think it would be kind of cool just to see him like that one time. One time. But it's really not that big a deal, because every actor who has played Armand, well, maybe not the Queen of the Damned actor, but I didn't see much of him to really, like, feel Armand in there, has done a really good job. Moving on from characters, it is time to talk about the plot points that have changed from the book to the show. After setting the house on fire, you know, trying to kill Lestat a second time and failing, because Louis and Claudia just suck at killing vampires, I guess, they travel to Europe to try and find vampires. Because Lestat was not a great teacher. He didn't know a lot. He didn't share a lot. He was just kind of there. They wanted to find, like, vampires, learn from them, meet these other vampires. They traveled across Europe trying to find these vampires. Eventually they do, however, it's more of like a zombie at this point. It's, like, decrepit and raggedy and just gross looking. And they're losing hope. They're like, are we the only vampires out there? Eventually, they travel to Paris, and that's where they discover the Theater of Vampires. Louis comes across Santiago at first, and then they find the theater. They find actual vampires, you know, that can speak and think and are like them. In the show, it happens quite the same, except they don't light a house on fire. They kill Lestat, and travel to Europe to try and find vampires. Now, this is happening at a different time. The book takes place more in the 1800s. Obviously, they moved it up for the show. So when they travel to Europe, it is during World War II. So they're dealing with war and just the catastrophe of all of that happening while they're looking for vampires. Go into a Romanian village, and Claudia discovers a vampire. It's raggedy, zombie-like, disgusting. She tries to communicate with it, but it doesn't really know how. It's like not all there. Right, so they go out to try and catch this vampire. They leave bait, and they go to see if they can communicate with it. However, things don't go as planned, and it attacks them. Its mother, a vampire that is more like them than it, arrives and tries to save her child. It turns out that Claudia, like, you know, blinds it, and his mother is forced to kill him because now he's blind. They go back to where she is living, and there's, like, dead bodies everywhere, and she's trying to turn these humans into vampires, and it's not working. They ask if she would like to go to America with them, you know, like travel with them, because she's the first, like, smart or, like, just vampire that's closest to them that they've met, and they really just want to, you know, cling on to that. However, she throws herself into a fire and kills herself in front of them, and they're really losing hope. Like, really just, things are going horribly wrong, and it's just not great, not great. So they travel to Paris, and they're not really, like, looking for vampires, but they're more like, they just need, like, something, you know. Louis is like, Claudia, you're all I need, and they just try and find, like, some happiness after this, you know, war-torn world they've been surrounded in, and they eventually find the Theater of Vampires. After they kill Lestat, they travel looking for vampires. Lestat is not dead, but Louis does feel kind of bad about it. You know, like, Lestat kind of sucked, but it's also like, damn. However, in the show, they manifested this in a very interesting way, and I think that this would have been really cool to see in the book. In the show, for, I believe, just the first 4 episodes, Louis is hallucinating Lestat. It's like his conscience. He feels so bad about killing Lestat that he imagines Lestat torturing him mentally. You know, just showing up and saying things Lestat would say, and being like, I'm gonna kill you, I'm just waiting till you're happy, and I'm gonna end your happiness. You know, when he's reading a letter left from Lestat, Lestat appears and reads it to him. When he's with Armand, he still sees Lestat because he can't truly be happy, and it's basically just his guilt manifesting itself. Eventually, once he decides that he is not going to let it control him anymore, because it's all his mind messing with him, he lets Lestat go, and he stops seeing Lestat wherever he goes. But the guilt manifesting as hallucinations, I think, was a very interesting way to do it. I touched on this in, I think, part 2 of the season 1 two-parter that I did, talking about the differences, but Louis and Armand's relationship. Now, in the book, he does feel attracted to Armand, and Armand feels attracted to Louis. This worries Claudia, that's why she wants Madeleine, because then she can have a companion, and someone actually chooses her, and, you know, she's not a side thought. He does, after Claudia dies, he does travel with Armand for a while, but eventually they separate. I think it's mostly Armand's like, Louis not going to change. Louis just kind of like, eh. And Armand's just like, bye, and leaves Louis. But they do travel for a while. I don't know how close the relationship really got, but, you know, there was something there. In the show, they kind of expand on this and show their love for one another. When they meet, there is like an instant attraction to one another. They do truly like each other, and Armand figures out that they killed Lestat like quite quickly, but instead of telling everybody and them getting murked like real quick, he keeps it to himself, which is nice, I think. And they slowly fall in love with one another, even though the Coven's like, excuse me, what the hell? And it's not, I wouldn't say, the most pure relationship. Both of them are toxic in their own way, which is not great, but they, you know, there's something they connect on. There's just something that they're like, all right, this is working. And after Claudia dies, they continue to see one another for 70 plus years. They have their ups and their downs. They have a ginormous fight in 1973, but they, you know, they're together. And this continues until Louis learns some things about Armand, and then he gets pissed. Armand's backstory is almost identical from book to show, with just a few slight differences. Armand was originally named Andre, and he was from the Russia area. Now, he was quite a skilled painter, and he painted icons. I think I'm saying that right. I-K-O-N. He was very talented. Like, his father was like, dude, humans can't do that. You got some godly power. So they had done one of these, and they were taking it as a, like an offering. And they were captured by Tartars, I think is how you pronounce it. They were captured. And Andre was kidnapped and taken to a brothel. Now, he was not doing what the men wanted him to do because obviously you're not going to just give in. And he's beaten so severely that he just like loses memories. He's just like, he doesn't even know what's going on. And Marius finds him like this, buys him, and brings him to his home and brings him back to health. Once he comes to this home, he realizes that Marius has done this with a few other boys. Once he is back to his strong self, he is educated and he grows a connection with Marius. And he notices that Marius is a little different, you know, not human. And but he doesn't question it because he's like, this life is good and I don't want to be a brothel slave, so let's just keep this going. However, eventually he pisses the wrong person off and gets stabbed with a poison blade, and it's killing him. Marius finds him like this and can't bring himself to lose Armand, so he turns him into a vampire. Now, Andre becomes Armand, or Amadeo, because Marius renames him. He just goes, Andre? Nah, Amadeo, that's your name. Which eventually Amadeo turns into Armand. In the show, he was sold into slavery by his parents instead of being kidnapped, which is so much worse. Like, seriously? They sold him into slavery. He was sent to a brothel and used and abused. Eventually, he was purchased by Marius. He does rename Andre into Amadeo in the show as well, which it means one loved by God. Which I guess is a very, I mean, if you're going to take someone's name and change it, at least it's a nice change. Armand speaks highly of Marius. It's quite obvious that he loved Marius, even if Marius was not the most kind vampire out there. I don't think any vampire is pure in any sense. There's always a toxicness to them. At least in this show, everybody's toxic. Everybody. He stayed with Marius for quite a long time until he grew sick and was on the verge of death at the age of 27, and that's when Marius finally turned Armand. When Lestat is kidnapped by Magnus, he separates himself from Nicholas. He was kind of concerned about hurting Nicholas or scaring Nicholas, so he kind of like just separated himself. He still watched over Nicholas and sent him gifts, even bought him a new apartment, like trying to be like, I'm still here. But this wasn't enough for Nicholas. This was, you know, he felt like Lestat had abandoned him and was just like, what the hell, dude? Where'd you go? Eventually, Nicholas is kidnapped by Armand and the other vampires of the Coven and fed upon repeatedly. Lestat goes to save Nicholas and gets him out of there, but Nicholas is on the verge of death. He's dying. The bites from the vampires, like, made his, like, the darkness that was in him so much worse. It was basically consuming him from the inside out. And he pleaded with Lestat to turn him, and eventually Lestat agrees. And when he feeds on Nicholas, he can actually, like, feel this darkness. It's like it's consuming him. It is just, like, very, like, just all-consuming, right? And he tastes this when he's feeding on Nicholas. He does turn Nicholas. However, this doesn't turn out very well. When Nicholas becomes a vampire, he goes catatonic. And eventually he does break out of this and decides that he wants to create the Theater of Vampires. And he wants to be the composer, because he's very good on the violin. And Lestat gives him that. He gives him to Armand's coven, and the theater to the coven, and says, watch over him. And they do for a while, but Nicholas kind of loses his shit. And eventually, like, goes crazy and starts just revealing himself to humans, which you can't do. So they eventually, like, lock him up. They even cut off his hands. Wow. When they do let him go, he writes, like, a bunch of new pieces and then decides that if they don't make a funeral pyre for him, he's going to light the theater on fire and kill himself. So I'm like, okay, dude, that's a little... Wow, okay. They do as he asked. He dances in the flames and goes out in a flame of glory. In the show, they don't talk about it, but it's similar. Nicholas and Lestat are lovers, and Nicholas is kidnapped by Armand, basically just to screw over Lestat. He is fed on repeatedly by the Coven, and Lestat does try to turn Nicholas, but Nicholas his mind was too fragile. He is a vampire for about a year, and then he is locked down in the basement, kind of where the vampires that break rules are left. I don't know what rule he broke, or if he was just losing his shit. So they just locked him down there. I don't know, but he did eventually lose his mind. In the book, the interview ends with Daniel asking Louis to turn him into a vampire. He's like, this is a great gift, you shouldn't squander it, please, I would love to be a vampire. And this really pisses Louis off. He's like, did you learn nothing of what I just said? Like, what? He attacks Daniel and leaves him there. When Daniel wakes up, he goes looking for Lestat, but eventually runs into Armand. In the show, that interview was their first interview, and the main interview of the show is their second one in Dubai. Now, the first interview ends in a very similar way. Daniel makes comments about how you could... Because Louis talked about, like, wanting to hurt himself, and Daniel's like, how could you hurt yourself? This is a great gift, you know. You shouldn't squander it. I mean, you... Basically, can you turn me into a vampire? Louis, snaps and attacks Daniel. Except this time, Armand steps in. Armand shows up and he goes, uh-oh. He separates the two, hurting Daniel further. And Daniel is kept in that apartment for days. You know, being questioned by Armand, being thrown around, just treated like garbage. And eventually Armand decides that he's going to put Daniel out of his misery by drinking him to death. He starts doing this when Louis stops him and says, please leave the boy alone. And it ends up with Daniel's memories being kind of blurred, and Louis and Armand letting Daniel live. I think they just drop him off somewhere and they let him go. Louis actually goes out in the sun and tries to hurt himself, which Armand stops him from doing. That doesn't happen in the book. He just never does that. But in both times Daniel is bitten, it's just the show is a little more, he's kept for days. In the book, he is attacked and just left there. And then Daniel wakes up alone. In both the book and the show, Madeline is turned into a vampire at Claudia's, I wouldn't say pleading, but want. In the book, Claudia becomes enthralled by the doll maker and wants Madeline as a companion because she can see that Louis is picking Armand over her, like he chose Lestat over her because she can never be number one, of course. And she wants him to turn Madeline so that she has a companion, so that way Louis can be happy with Armand and she can be happy with Madeline. Now, Louis does not do this out of the kindness of his heart. He feels like this is a job. He does it for her more out of annoyance. He more of attacks Madeline in the book. Like, it's not like a really caring for Madeline in any sense of the word. He kind of just does it because he has to. Out of annoyance, anger, and just In the show, he does turn Madeline because Claudia wants him to, because he's growing close to Armand and she can sense that he is choosing someone else over her again. So she wants Madeline so she can have someone that chooses her. Now, Louis doesn't really want to do this, but he doesn't turn her out of anger or disgust or anything like that. It's more of like, it is a job, but he does treat her nicer. He begins to feed on her, and Claudia loses control, and she does as well. And Louis cuts open his arm, feeds Madeline his blood, makes a mess everywhere, but it does work. And in both times, Madeline, the turning of her, succeeds. Now in the book, she's a vampire for a very short amount of time before they are kidnapped. But in the show, she is a vampire for at least a little while. I don't know how long. Days, weeks, months, maybe even years. I don't know. But she is a vampire for at least more than a few hours. In both the book and show, Madeline and Claudia die. They die in the same manner, just it comes up in a different way. Madeline, Claudia, and Louis are kidnapped from their apartment and taken to the Theater of Vampires. Louis is trapped in a coffin, and Claudia and Madeline are put out in the sun. Now, there is no trial, no, they don't give him a chance. They're kind of just like, we found out you killed Lestat, even though Lestat's not even dead. Punishment. Madeline did absolutely nothing wrong, but, whatever. And they were left out in the sun. They burned. Louis didn't. In the show, however, they gave them a trial. A very like trial in front of a human audience. Even if they tried to speak out, they were silenced. Nothing they said was going to change anything. Death was going to be the end of it. It was just a show. Put them on display. Now, Louis is taken off stage because it is assumed that Armand saves him by, instead of getting him killed, he is banished. So he is put into a coffin and left down there. Very similar to the book. The girls are left on stage and are burned in front of everybody. But in the book, they are both just left out in the sun. Nothing. In the show, they actually gave Madeline an option. In the book, they just killed her because she was there. I mean, she never did anything wrong. They should have saved her in the first place, but whatever. In the show, they gave her a chance. They said, if you denounce Claudia and join our coven, we'll spare you. But, being the awesome woman Madeline is, said that Claudia was her coven and that she chose Claudia. So she died with Claudia because she wanted to be with Claudia that badly. And I was like, that's so cute. It sucked, but it was cute. In both, Louis loses his mind after Claudia dies and decides that he's going to kill every single vampire in the theater. In the book, when he gets out of his coffin, he lights the entire theater on fire with every vampire inside. But of course, Armand survives. He's not there. In the show, it's similar but a little more aggressive. When he gets out of the coffin, he kind of loses his mind. He's kind of like not all there. He's living in a graveyard, piling up bodies in a mausoleum. He's drawing out a map on the floor. He's talking to himself, and he's planning to light the theater on fire. He warns Armand of this and goes to the theater with, like, gasoline and Molotov cocktails. And he lights the theater on fire and beheads anyone that comes close, I believe with a scythe. A few vampires escape, 4 to be exact. 2 of them are on motorcycles that he tampered with, and they blew up. Then there was Santiago, who escaped through the sewer. He pisses Santiago off so badly that he jumps out of the sewer onto the street, and Louis beheads him, and then kicks his head down the street. And the only one to actually live was a spy for the Talamasca, which you find out later on, but he was the only one that made it out, aside from Armand, who wasn't there. In the book, Armand is involved with the killing of Claudia and Madeline. He does really like Louis. He actually influences Louis to turn Madeline, so that way Claudia has Madeline and he's free of her. He does know, eventually that Lestat was almost killed by Claudia, and he decides that killing her is the only option. It's a rule. You can't be killing other vampires. So he is involved in killing Claudia and Madeline. Louis still travels with him after that. But whatever. In the show, he's a little more involved. The trial that they had for the pair, or the 3, was more of a play than a trial. And he actually directed it. He had director's notes, and he knew what was happening, and he was going to kill all 3 of them. He was not planning to save Louis or any of the 3. He was planning to make a show of it and kill all of them. It is not discovered until later on that Lestat was the one who saved Louis by hypnotizing the room and saying banishment rather than death. And Armand was just planning to kill him. Which the fact that he planned to kill him and then still dated him for 70 years after, obviously Louis did not know, but Armand did. And I'm like, what was the point then? Like, if you really liked him and you stayed with him 70 years after you planned to kill him, why were you going to kill him then? I mean, yes, he broke rules and shit, but come on. In the book, after the interview with Louis, he goes to look for Lestat and runs into Armand. Now, Armand lets him live and then, stalks him for a while and asks a ton of, questions about modern day. Eventually, he falls in love with Daniel and they begin a relationship. The main goal of the relationship is Daniel wants to be a vampire and Armand wants to learn about modern day stuff, technology, basically. And he keeps holding out on Daniel because, of course, and eventually, when Daniel's on the brink of death, he finally turns him. They're together for a while, and then they separate because the Maker usually, after they turn their fledgling, the fledgling grows to hate them. So it didn't last very long after that, and then they separated. In the show, they don't even show him becoming a vampire. This is their second interview. Daniel is much older, and Louis, after finding out that Armand was involved in the killing of Claudia, beats the crap out of him. and says, "Get out of my apartment. I never want to see you again. Don't touch him." Louis leaves, and obviously Armand touches Daniel and turns him into a vampire. They don't show how it happens, but I'm gonna guess Armand gets real angry, attacks Daniel, turns him into a vampire. They don't go into how it happened, the exact details of it, but you can kind of assume what happened. Lestat and Louis' final conversation is the same but different. In the book, he does go to Lestat and finds him disheveled in a robe, eating rats and possibly a baby. And he is broken. There's something seriously wrong with him. He's just not even a shell of his, past self. He's just kind of like broken. He's a heap of a vampire. And this happens before the end of the interview. He basically just wants to see Lestat, and then he leaves. Lestat begs him to stay, and he says no. And he leaves him, and Lestat's just like disheveled and broken. And then after this, eventually he turns into a rock star. In the show, he goes to New Orleans after the second interview and stumbles upon Lestat. Now, Lestat is in a disheveled home. He's in a robe. He's actually in the robe that they wore, I believe, their first night together, which is really cute and sad. He's playing a piano on a wooden board. He's eating rats, and he's just kind of he's a shell of his one self. Same thing. They actually have a longer conversation. In the book, their conversation is quite short, honestly. And in the show, Louis actually thanks him for turning him into a vampire, the gift that he didn't know was a gift. He apologized for treating Lestat like total garbage. Just, both of them are toxic, but he was apologizing. They talk about the interview in 1973 when he steps out into the sun, and they talk about the loss of Claudia. In the show, the last thing Claudia sees is Lestat, and Lestat cannot get that image out of his head. And it has broken him, and he really apologizes for Claudia, and he feels so terrible about her death and, everything that happened after that. And it ends with them hugging. Now, there is, I believe, a hurricane happening, so the house is shaking, and they're hugging one another. Now, the actors said that they were actually talking. After they hug, they say a few words, and they'll keep it between themselves. They're not going to tell us what they said, and I hope one day we figure out what they said. Now, I don't know if in season 3, Louis and Lestat at least would be on better terms. I don't think that they're going to be in a relationship again. Maybe. But it ends on better terms, and that moment is so heartbreaking and so cute and just, And the last major plot point is the Talamasca's involvement. Now, in the first book, the Talamasca, I believe, is not even introduced. It's not a thing. They are not involved in any way. They're not talked about. It's just a vampire being interviewed by a human dude. In the show, however, it is implied that the Talamasca has been involved for quite some time. And in the second interview, they make themselves known to Daniel. They send him articles, they send him pictures, they send him like a list of questions that they want him to ask. Rashid, the real Rashid, gives him the play for the trial and the notes that Armand had taken from his, while directing this play. And so they are involved in this. They're not planning to help Daniel if he gets attacked. They're not planning to really, step in if something bad happens. They're kind of just curious, and they want to see where it goes. They have a bigger part to play in this interview than it was implied in the book. Now, I might have missed a few plot points throughout Season 2, but I tried to focus on the major ones that I noticed. Now, I have only read the first 3 books in this series, and there are many, many, many more books. The characters none of them are pure at heart. All of them are toxic in their own ways. You might like a character, but something's wrong with them. Even Louis got his issues. They all got issues, okay? Some of the differences between the book and the show, I actually really like that they involved them. Specifically, Madeline and Claudia's, relationship. It wasn't a big part of the book, nor was it in the movie, but in the show they actually, developed it more. We got a backstory to Madeline. We got to see more of them interacting with one another, and Madeline got to be a vampire for more than 5 seconds. I believe in the book she was only a vampire for a few hours before they kidnapped her. Rude. I don't know how long she was a vampire in the show, but it got to be more than a few hours, so that's at least something. Some of the changes were minor. Some of them were quite large. But honestly, I enjoyed all of season 2. I didn't mind the changes. They didn't, like, take away from the story. And I cannot wait till season 3 where we get a Rockstar Lestat. Oh, it's gonna be so good. Oh my god. And we get Lestad's backstory. Yes, it's all I've wanted. It's all I've wanted. So I am excited. So stay tuned for a book versus TV show season 3 edition when that eventually comes out, hopefully next year. Probably 2-3 years from now, but we can hope. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be back again next week with another one. Alright, see you later.